I remember when I first got married, there was all these old timers in our marriage. And I went around and I said, basically, hey, anybody who's been married for 35 years, I'm gonna ask them what's the secret of marriage. And I swear, 50% of the people had the exact same answer. It was, yes, dear. That was the answer. I can tell you something, in retrospect, they were all miserable. In this video, we're gonna talk about the 4 basic ways to save your relationship. My name is Hudson. I'm a former venture capitalist, and I coach some of the most notable names in Silicon Valley. And before we talk about the ways to save your relationship, I think it's really important to talk about a perspective that's required in saving your relationship. So I work with some incredibly high-powered people who have built billion-dollar companies in like the space of 5 years, and yet somehow they have this belief system that says, I can build a successful company, I can make billions of dollars inside of a decade, but I can't do it and have a great marriage. Or I can be happy with somebody else, but I can't be happy in my marriage. Or I can't be free in my marriage, I have to be somebody else to be married. These belief systems are really important because if you are giving effort and at the same time feeling like it's impossible, you're really not going to succeed. Imagine you are a champion swimmer and you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail. And there's somebody else who's a champion swimmer who is just as good in all ways, but they're thinking to themselves, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna win. Who are you gonna put your money on? So that perspective up front that you can actually do it, that it's possible, is critical if you're gonna save your relationship. So let's get into the 4 basic things you can do to save your relationship. The first one is turn the blame into wants. The second one is say the difficult things to say. The third one is don't take responsibility for the other person's emotion. And the fourth one is, as illogical as it sounds, make it all about you. Let's start with the first one. Let's talk about blame to wants. So I love this story. There was this time where one of my clients was going to the restroom. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, the time when you stub your toe and you go into the bathroom, and started to pee and missed the toilet. And he noticed a thought that he had, and the thought was, she moved the toilet. And immediately he realized, I am blaming my wife for all sorts of things. It doesn't even make sense what I'm blaming her for. When we blame each other, when we try to figure out who's to blame, it just tears a relationship apart. So there's a great saying that I heard recently: if you're blaming someone else, you've started the journey. If you're blaming yourself, you're halfway through the journey. If there's nobody to blame, you're done with the journey. I think that's just a lovely saying, because placing blame onto another person or onto yourself, it doesn't actually help you get better. It just creates shame, and shame stagnates the emotions that we're having and stagnates the reality we are having. There's this great saying that I love, and it says, shame is the locks that hold the chains of bad habits in place. And when you're blaming, you're putting shame on each other. And when you do that, it's just holding those bad habits in place. So, instead of blaming somebody, every time you feel that urge to blame, just own what you want. Say, I would want this. I want that. The reason for this is because often when you're blaming, you feel disempowered. You feel like, I can't have the life that I want, which means asking for what you want is a way to feel empowered again. Sometimes people don't do it because it's a little scary to ask for what they want, but at least your partner knows where you are, knows where you stand, instead of you just being resentful in the background and going, nying, 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 nying. Like, who the hell wants to be with that? Who wants to be married to that? So, first thing you do is move all of your blame into wants. The second thing is learning to share the difficult stuff. So oftentimes when a relationship deteriorates, people stop saying the difficult stuff. And they stop saying it for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that if I share it, they're going to get upset, or they're going to fall apart, or they're going to get angry. So I call that walking on eggshells. So I'm not going to do it because I don't like the consequence of their behavior. And the other reason is because we're trying to manage each other often in a relationship. Like, how do I get them to be X, Y, and Z? Because once they're X, Y, and Z, then I can be happy. And none of that really allows for the deeper conversation, and therefore you don't really know each other. You don't really know the things that are underneath the surface. And then how can you actually love each other if you don't know each other? It's like this crazy trade that we make when we say, I can be liked for who I'm not rather than be liked for who I am. And if you're not sharing that deep stuff, you can't actually be liked for who you are. You can only be liked for who you're pretending to be. Here's a couple cool tools to help make those deeper conversations easier. First one is listen. Don't listen with judgment. Don't listen with trying to fix the other person. Don't listen trying to save the other person. You just listen. Just be with whatever emotions you have and listen. Listen with unconditional acceptance. And the other one is to draw boundaries. It's just simply to be able to say to somebody, hey, I just want to share. I don't want input right now. I just want to be heard. Or I don't want to solve the problem. I just want to be heard. Or nothing needs to change. I'm just exploring some thoughts. I just want to be heard. And so drawing that boundary so that you can get the space to be heard is critical. And oftentimes when we get heard, what we want, what happens, what we're going to do next changes because we actually get to process it and find out our deeper truth. So number 3 is don't take responsibility for another person's emotions. So this one is like one of the most challenging ones that there are. So oftentimes we think as a partner to somebody in a relationship, we're responsible for making them happy, or they're responsible for making us happy. So that is an incredible dilemma because nobody can make you happy but you, and nobody can make me happy but me. And so eventually we're gonna fail. Even more than that, if I start trying to make you happy, what I'm actually communicating to you is that you're not capable of making yourself happy, which is disempowering, which means you're gonna be resentful of me. Or if you're saying to me, oh, my job is to make you happy, then I'm disempowered and I feel like I have to be resentful to just even maintain any sense of self. So taking responsibility for each other's happiness really creates a tremendous amount of resentment. Now, I'm not saying don't be kind to each other. I'm not saying don't show care to one another. But there's this moment that you'll have in a relationship where you're leaning in, trying to make sure that they feel good. That's what you don't do. You just simply allow a person to have their emotions, and instead of trying to fix it, you just be with it. You're just like, oh, look, you're having that emotion, and that's fine. That's great. It passes. There's nothing that has to be done. You don't have to be fixed. We're good. Think about it this way. You say to somebody, hey, don't be sad, as compared to, oh, I see that you're sad. Yeah, I'm right here. Maybe you can even say, what, if anything, can I do? Maybe they don't want you to do anything, but it's not your job to take care of them. They're a full-grown adult. And if you start taking care of them, they start acting like a kid. It's a horrible thing. So it's really important to not take responsibility for the other person's happiness. So the last one is making it all about you. I remember when I first got married, there was all these old timers in our marriage. And I went around and I said, basically, hey, anybody who's been married for 35 years, I'm gonna ask them what's the secret of marriage. And I swear, 50% of the people had the exact same answer. It was, yes, dear. That was the answer. I can tell you something, in retrospect, they were all miserable. They were married, but it wasn't a happy marriage. And so the way that this works is, people have a disagreement and they say, hey, we're gonna compromise. And compromising means we're gonna just carve a little piece of myself off. I'm gonna leave that on the side so that you can be happy. And then you're gonna carve a little piece of yourself off and leave that behind, and then I'm gonna be happy. And then we just keep on carving away. We keep on saying yes, dear, and then all of a sudden there's nothing left in the marriage. Our entire personhood is outside of the marriage, and there's just this like shell of a skeleton of a person inside of the marriage. And so with Tara and I, we decided early on that we're just never gonna compromise. And what I mean by that is that we are gonna think to ourselves, we're smart enough to find a solution that works for both of us. We can find a way that we can both be happy, that we can both support each other in the growth, and that every place where we can't find a way to be happy with one another means that there's something in us to work on. And that's where the real key of it's all about you means. It means when you are working on the relationship, you don't work on the other person ever. You always work on yourself. Not with blame, you're not blaming yourself, you're not blaming the other person, but you're taking the relationship as a path of growth. Every place where there's that little where you want to compromise or you want to give up is a place for you to look at yourself and see yourself more clearly. And when you both are making it all about yourselves and about your growth, then the relationship just thrives. There's something really critical that I want to end with, which is the relationship you have with another is really best reflected in the relationship you have with yourself. If you have a loving relationship with yourself, you're going to have a loving marriage, you're going to have a loving relationship with your lover, with your girlfriend, with your boyfriend. If you have a relationship with yourself where you're at war, you're going to be at war with your wife or your partner. So the main thing about keeping that focus on yourself is really working on the relationship that you have with yourself, because that is what reflects in the world, in your company, in the people you work with, and with the people you love. If you got a lot out of the video, please subscribe, tell us what else you want to hear about, and feel free to watch the next video.